Singh has been working with Aussizz Group Canning well. Yeah, he has over 12 years of experience in immigration practice. He is proficient in other immigration visas like General Skill Migration Visa, Parent Visa, Partner Visa, with extensive knowledge about migration policies and legislation. He's known for putting his clients at ease by his pleasant personality that brightens up the consultation and brings a smile to his client's face. The guest joining the session today will be getting all the valuable information about parent visa along with a good laugh here and there. He's a flamboyant personality, so we are sure to have an engaging session today. We are very happy to answer your questions. We'll be taking your questions at the end of the session. But if you need answers to your questions in a dedicated, personalized way, please make sure to join our Q&A session dedicated for individual consultation, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Our experts will be waiting to take your question. Thank you so much. DM, you can start now.
Oh my God, under so much of pressure. You've put me into such a pedestal. But thank you, Deepa, for the very warm introduction. It's always a pleasure when you are going to do something live. We've got prepared screens and information that we want to share. All I can say is welcome on board wherever you are. This is virtual. This is conclave. This is rock and roll time right now. And I think as Deepa just mentioned, quick stuff is I'm going to be talking about parent visas. Now, very exhaustive because there's so many different classes, different categories, so much information to go through within this short period of time. But at any point in time, while I go through this information and I'm going to disseminate this thing to you, anything that is perhaps very important to you at this particular point in time, or if I'm unable to answer that, although I may be that experienced as how Deepa has put it, feel free to please get in touch with me because no question is a silly question, as we say. And wherever you are, I'm really, very thankful. I wish I can reach out and touch these people, but this is the world that we live in. This is virtual, so let's get straight back onto parent visas. And thank you for listening so far. Okay, so let's start straight away. So this is me, Dharmindher, and parent visas. I warned you, there were so many types of parent visas, so there you go. A lot of the stuff is self-explanatory, Deepa, so these guys can see all the screen. Am I correct? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, I'm seeing you.
All right, awesome. So parent visas become very popular for a lot of people when, especially if they settle down here and after a period of time, because, oh, right, I like to bring my family member, and in this particular instance, parent. And they get a lot of questions about which class of parent visa shall I bring someone on board? And hence why you have this information in front of you. Don't be overwhelmed by, oh my God, subclass 103, 864, 804. What's all this and what is it? We'll go into that from a microscopic level on each visa. So don't be alarmed, right? I want to spend some time on this matrix because this matrix, seriously, wherever you are, this matrix is just going to tell you two things that you need to remember. The questions we get all the time, contributory and non-contributory. So when you look at that, don't worry about the numbers in each of the boxes just yet. Start telling yourself, how old my parent is, or what's their age, or who, one parent, two parent, we'll talk about all that later. Worry about the fact that, not worry as in worry, but start asking yourself, do I want to go through a faster, quicker phase? And then that becomes a contributory pattern. And as it is, there's no secret. Every time you pay some money to the Department of Immigration, things accelerate, or anywhere else, as you can probably imagine. So hence why you go into the contributory phase. So you have aged onshore, or you have not aged, right? So, and we'll also explain to you what the definition of age is specifically. Now, looking at my left screen, I mean, that means looking at contributory, right? So a lot of the times, the questions that we normally get from a lot of the clients, if you want to call them, is I'm going to bring my parent down here and I want to launch an onshore application. And do I automatically get a bridging visa? We'll cover that as well. Bridging visas, when and how, if at all, which ones that you choose is actually going to entitle you to a bridging visa. And also we'll go into say the non-contributory sort of things to understand the processing time. Processing time is exactly that. Some of the categories, and you'll see I've got a lot of slides planned down here. Some of these would probably shock you when you've never done a parent visa. You've Googled everything else from the internet, and then you now are going to be telling yourself, oh my God, processing time sometimes can take to 20-25 years. So if you want to minimize that, because your parent is already aged, you could be from 55 onwards to right up until 80 if you like. We want to go into specifics to see how best can you minimize cost if you want, how best can you minimize processing time, and the ease of application is also what we're going to get into. So we might have to come back to the matrix, but for right now, let's just jump to the very important thing before anything is done. Any client sometimes comes up to me and says, oh, I want to bring my parent to do this and that, the other. I'm like, oh, hang on. Do you meet the balance of family test? The balance of family test, if you're looking at the screen, I'm not a fan of reading everything from presenting it in this manner, but I want you to realize that this really determines whether or not you are eligible to bring your parent in. So, for example, a quick thing, well, it says down there, bullet point number 2, where if at least half their children are stepchildren are eligible children. Now, you want to say if you got 3 in your family, if 2 of you are down here, you meet the balance of family test is really what they're trying to say. So, bullet point number, the last bullet point, the BOFT is in the balance of family test cannot be waived, even in compelling and exceptional circumstances. We'll come back to that shortly, okay? Because there are some cases where it's all situational, but let's just not get into specifics right now. Move on to the next one. So which are the visas that balance of family test actually applies to? And as you can see, evidently almost all except the 870, which is the last one, which is the temporary parent visas, which we haven't touched upon just yet. So basically, virtually, it applies to every parent visa that we have on the screen, okay? Now, who is eligible and who is ineligible in terms of, applying for this visa for the parent? This is an interesting one where someone sometimes says, oh, my siblings are, say, 4 of us, and I've lost touch with a particular sibling because for various reasons things has happened. I don't even know the whereabouts of my own person, but I want to still try to apply it on that basis. Look, I want to jump to the last point. It says, if the child's whereabouts are unknown, we consider they are resident in the country. Okay, so you can't just tell the department that, oh, it's only how many of us down here, and therefore we meet the balance of family test. You have to prove to the department that you are actually eligible. So if sometimes, I'm sorry to take a little bit time on this thing here, because sometimes things happen within families. And that's the dynamic world that we live in. Sometimes you cut ties, you severe ties with a child for various reasons, and things happen. So now if you can present that case, and I'm saying this live, you can present that case, and those things have been proven to say that, oh, your family composition has changed because of that, and that's arguable, and then we can go ahead with that. And only in the extreme cases should we bother about that, okay? So don't overwhelm yourself with that. Now, who is counted in the balance of family? We're saying that the children are not counted if they're obviously deceased and have been removed from their parents' exclusive legal custody, which is what I was just talking about. And you just can't simply say that just because you're no longer talking to your family and they no longer are within your family circle, you don't make that decision. That is made by court order or operation of the law. We can fight as siblings, but we still got to make sure that things are happening within the proper manner. Let's see. Refugees are always from UNHCR. That's also very important. Who is counted here? So live in a country where they suffer persecution of human rights. So okay, so that's all very, very important. I don't want to name some of my clients and where they're from, but if you come from a place where if you've been persecuted and because you were able to leave earlier as a child, and you've been settled down here, and then obviously your parents have been left behind. So you need to know that if you wanted to still apply and eventually bring them on board, you still need to meet through this particular requirements for the balance of family. So just remember that, okay? It doesn't matter that you've come in from whatever various reason, but you still need to meet this requirement. Stepchilds, let's just talk about that very, very quickly. What it is it's a parent's current partner's child or your former partner child who is under 18 years of age. And I think it says down here with your guardianship. Okay, so if you have guardianship, if you've got all of that stuff that mentions that you are basically a legal guardian of the child, then game on. Eligible New Zealand citizens, let's just talk about that very quickly. I'm just mentioning, okay, so there are very good time periods in terms of bearing in mind 2001 is really where a lot of people, if you are firstly classed as eligible New Zealand citizen, then you can seemingly start looking into meeting this balance of family test at the same time in order to bring in your parent. Parent visas. Now, I've done a little bit of a different thing down here. It's called a Dusra, right? I've spun it around in such a way that I wanted to give you all of those things first before going into the parent visas introduction, because had I started with this particular slide, I found that people then begin to be questioning what is a balance of family test, what are the metrics and stuff like that. So basically, a lot of information, but let's just go into that because this is important, right? So they're permanent visas. They are of, like I already mentioned, if you're settled and if you're New Zealand citizen or Australian citizen, this applies to you. You got to meet Schedule 1 and 2 criteria, which is what I've already covered, which is the balance of family test. And what have we got here? We've got some very basic information to say that a parent can be onshore and apply for an onshore parent visa. So those are the ones that we have on the screen, which is 173, 143, and 103. But they will not be eligible for the associate bridging visa, which is what I was talking about earlier, because I get that question all the time. Parent comes here on a visitor visa, and because they are on a visitor visa for either three months, 6 months, a year, or whatever, and then they are asking questions of which pathway shall I choose? Which visa can I get? They have this thing that parents come here for various reasons. They come down, they want to be with the nephews and nieces, they want to be with the family, the extended family. Don't start thinking that automatically by virtue of you applying onshore, you're going to get a bridging visa that keeps you down here until the processing time happens. So those visas, 173, 143, 103, you are not eligible for any bridging visa. So in other words, you can apply, you can stay onshore, but you might have to leave, okay, while the processing is happening. You can come in and out, has what they call boomerang visas. You just spin them around, come back again, and on what is permissible via a visitor visa, okay? So don't be overwhelmed. So the two groups of parent visas, so which has already counted just now in the matrix that I showed you, contributory, non-contributory. And then last but not least, we'll talk about the 870. This doesn't lead to PR, but this is important as well. I've got some good information. It's a fairly new visa. It's really meant for people who says, well, the parent is not interested in a PR. They want to come down here for 3 to 5 years because they're happy in their respective countries and they just want to be here without going through the fuss of going in and out on visitor visas and all the rest of it. So that's the temporary sponsored parent visas. There's different criteria you need to meet. I'll go into that. I've got some good slides to talk about that, and I'm sure I'm going to, elicit some sort of questions from some of you at the same time. So, bridging visas. I warned you, this is going to be very important. So, onshore applications. Let's see. You're holding or held a substantive visa. You're eligible for a bridging visa when they are lodged an application for one of the following subclasses: subclass 804 and 864. Don't be overwhelmed. 804, 864, what is it? We will go into that. We will go into each one, but just at the back of your head, if you have already made up your mind as to, oh, I think my parent qualifies for an 864, do I need or will I get a bridging visa? This is what I'm trying to say to you. We will cover that at the same time, okay? So don't worry about that. Then we have the bridging visas for the contributory 173 to onshore parent, that's permanent. Contributory H parent from 884 to 864. Now, the bridging visa will come into effect only when the current visa expires. Hence why it's called a bridging effect, bridging visa. It's called a bridging effect at the same time. So if your current visa is active, you've applied for something, if you are eligible for a bridging visa, that is, then that stays dormant until your existing visa ends, and then the bridging visa, becomes active. Now, must be in Australia at the time of application, be in Australia at the time of decision. So I'm going to give you a case study shortly, but if at all you are in a situation where if you're on a visitor visa down here and you lodge for a specific visa, in this case, parent visa, which is all we're talking about, and if you're eligible for a bridging visa, it will just keep you here. Let me see, how would this thing pan out if, no, I'll tell you what, hang on. I think when we come to 143, that example will come through. Just bear in mind. So let's go into 103. So 103 is a permanent visa. These can be lodged, like I said, either inside or outside, which is what we call onshore or offshore. But there's no associated bridging visa. Remember that the applicant must be outside at the time of grant. So you can lodge this onshore, but like I said, there's no associated bridging visa. At the time of grant, you have to be outside. So just remember that. So there's no age criteria applicable for the offshore parent visas. Members of the family unit apply at the same form and at the same time and at the same as the primary applicant. To be granted a visa, they must successfully satisfy the secondary criteria, which we'll go into that at the same time. Length, which is I was just talking about earlier on, 25 to 30 years processing time. Again, if you look after yourself and everything else is okay without worrying too much about your own medicals and your state of your own health and everything else, you could probably still stick around down here, but not worry so much so that I'm going to get a permanent visa. But if your modus operandi, if your whole objective is to be onshore, then don't worry too much about the processing time. Just worry the fact that you are eligible and you're going to be down here and probably have a better quality of life depending on where you're from. Okay. So what's the last thing to note? There is an age increasing. Okay. So this can be a bit of a problem for a lot of people who feel that they might perhaps, as time goes on, they might be subjected to changes in their health. So to be mindful of that. What have we got? Again, another 804, which is a permanent visa. This is hence why it's called aged applicants. Don't take this the wrong way. Aged, you've aged like a good bottle of wine. You've aged. You know, you might be tasting much more better at another period of time. But for our purpose down here, aged is prescribed very much as to where and when you meet the pension age. So I'll have a screen afterwards to show you what is the pension age at the same time. I do apologize if you are reading something and I'm saying, and if you're trying to connect the dots, you are going to come across the very same thing, and then I'll come back again onto that point. So age is usually, I think pension age is past 67, and you'll understand why. So there are eligibility for associated bridging visas for this particular 804. Again, lengthy processing time. Make provisions for good care for your private health care and whatnot, and most of the people normally do. Okay, age pension, this is what I was talking about earlier on. So the pension age changes from time to time as however the department or the government deems fit. So as of now, it's 66 years and 6 months. So if they are above this, then they are qualified for the previous visa, which is what I was talking about, 804. Okay. Now, Goodness me, these are all numbers that we got to be mindful of, Deepa, one day, you know. But yeah, let's just not go into that territory for now. So age pension, this is the information out there. Like I said, we get this from the department. Now, this is an important visa. Why? Because a lot of people say, hey, I want to bring my parents in. I'm happy to pay, and I want to bring them in quicker. This particular visa basically allows you to stay here, processing time notwithstanding because of what's happening in the international border and the cap and queue for specific parent visas. Normally it can take 3 to 4 years for that actual grant of a PR for this one, hence why it's contributory. And from memory, a particular parent or single parent, the cost of that with the assurance of support and everything else, you can end up paying close to $47,500 per parent. Now, if you have two, which some of us do, then you got to factor in all the stuff. Like I said, the age criteria is not applicable, but you must be offshore at the time of grant. So in other words, you can apply onshore, but you don't get a bridging visa. So you stay here as the way that I was trying to say earlier on, where you apply for a visitor visa and then you go in and out. You can come in and out on a visitor visa. That's not a problem, okay? But the whole idea for a contributory parent visa is that you are accelerating the processing time. Remember that, okay? What does it say down here? Applicants who hold, okay, so that's another one. So 173 can be applied first if you don't want to go directly for a 143, because you still are paying a little bit lesser money for the first stage before a 143 kicks in, okay? Now, no Medicare until visa is in hand, unless 173 visa holder or reciprocal arrangements. Reciprocal arrangements are, in some countries, they have an arrangement with Australia, so you can actually get Medicare covered from your respective countries, and Australia is privy to that. Now, 173, like I said, this is a transitional to 143, as I was saying earlier. This is a temporary visa for 2 years, but you must apply for the 143 first within the 2 years of holding a 173. Now, the VSC 1 and 2 to be paid. Oh, yeah, exactly. So that is the charges that I was telling you about. So in other words, you don't pay that at the time of application. You pay that when, if for the 173, for example, if it's for the first 2 years, just before that's finishing, they'll ask you pay the first charge, and then 2 years later, if you've met the other requirements, just before the grant of the 143, you would have to pay the second charge. Again, that, like I said, if it's a 143 straight away, that's a lot of money, but you don't have to pay that assurance of support at the time of grant. Sorry, at the time of application. So at the time of grant, could be 3, 4 years later, they'll ask you, right, you've paid the department fees, you've paid whatever other fees, but this charge that we're talking about is only paid, which could be almost $50,000 by the time you're waiting and all of that, is when they're going to grant that. So don't be too shocked that that's a lot of money straight away, right? So you must be also outside of Australia at the time of grant, like I already said. I say current processing times is about 48 months. The Department of Immigration, they work in mysterious ways, okay? You could launch an application and you can see, oh, today it says, 14 to 18 months. God forbid, 6 months later, you go back and check again because you kind of think that that's going to be the real thing. The goalpost keeps changing every time. We don't have any control over that. Lately, more so in the last 1.5 years, a lot has happened in terms of people, or some of my clients who applied for this visa and who were seemingly thinking that their processing time was whatever that visa that they've applied. You have to add more than 1.5 years to that because they are not granting these offshore visas at this moment for various reasons, based on the pandemic situation that we are in. So you got to factor that in at the same time. before they are beginning to start issuing these visas grant. In the event, whilst we are on this, just on the top of my head, if you're granted a visa, don't think, oh, now I'm sure we might get this question as well, that I've been granted a visa and when can I come into the country? When the borders are open and things are such that you meet some exemptions and whatnot, doesn't mean that you have a visa that you can come right back in. Remember, there are citizens and PR, the residents right now who are in various parts of the world who can't enter the country because of the hard border stance. So nothing happens to that. So you have a grant, you just wait and you apply for an exemption, and that's how you would come through. Okay, we are bound to get that question, Deepa, that's for sure.
Yes.
So let's jump into contributory aged parent. So remember the word here, contributory. There's a specific reason why I put that. Why? Because this is why this is live, and then the phone goes off onto something else. Beautiful. Everything is off, Deepa. Everything is off. All good. All live. Yeah. Yeah. So subclass 864. It's a permanent visa. So I want to read through this because I think this is quite important, because I do get a lot of questions on this, just in case some of the viewers are actually looking at this and reading this, and hence why we want to read this together, right? So it's a permanent visa. It's an applicant must be in Australia and must be aged. And according to pension age requirement, which is what we've already spoken about, which is above almost 67 right now, okay? Hence why aged. So the applicant would be eligible for a bridging visa. So that's why this particular one is good during the processing period, but would not be eligible for Medicare until the visa grant. So hence why you need to make your own provisions, make sure that they've got good healthcare and nothing untoward happens whilst they are waiting down here. So members of the family unit who are making combined applications with the primary applicant will be granted the visa, provided the main applicant and secondary applicant meet the relevant criteria. Onshore applicants, okay, check 8503 conditions. This is what I meant. So if they are already here, they are visiting you down here, they are on a visitor visa. So if they don't have an 8503 condition, which means that a normal visitor visa sometimes has this condition, but you won't know until you actually apply for a visitor visa. It's a little bit like a lottery. And if you have an 8503 condition, what it really means is there's no further stay. So it's not like it's terminal, like, oh my God, no further stay, what am I going to do? You apply to waive that condition. You can apply in some cases. In the event there is no further stay condition, hence you are eligible to apply for this visa onshore and subsequently get a bridging visa, okay? And Section 48 is a rarity in the sense of for people who are actually applying. But Section 48, just briefly, what it means is you are unable to launch a visa onshore. That's just what it is. If you have Section 48, then this particular pathway for a parent visa is not for you. Now, if applying for 864 and 884, which we will jump into 884 secondly, there's a specific form. I thought I put that in there because people have filled out a particular 47 PA and then realized that it's a wrong form and it's a waste of time, okay? For applicants in Australia, the visa lets all parents leave permanently if they have a child who is a sponsor. Okay, I think that makes sense as well. So it's a permanent visa. You get a bridging visa at the same time. And Medicare is until the grant of the visa. Just remember that. So if you have an 8503 condition, alarm bells, yes, but you can apply to waive that condition. So don't feel it's not possible. So 884 is contributory age, but it's a temporary visa, right? So it's a transitional to 864. Okay, so just remember that. So that's contributory age. It's a permanent. So 884 is transitional to 864. So it's a 2-year temporary visa, just like how I was describing to you earlier on. You have the 173 and 143. So welcome to the world of parent visas. If you are up until now watching and listening to this, you are now beginning to feel, hang on, it's not a straightforward process. I need to establish balance of family test. I need to establish how old my parent is. Pension age, not parent, pension age. Where is my parent going to be when I'm going to launch this visa? Am I eligible for a bridging visa? Because the cost of having a parent who is already perhaps aged, travel all the way from whichever country down here on a visitor visa, you launch an application. But then you think, oh my God, the parent has to travel back again because their visitor visa is going to finish. It's not fun because it's add to the cost of travel and insurance and everything else. And there's a lot of fun thing when you're pressed to make a decision, because guess what? You're already down here and your parents is asking you, why aren't you applying for my parent visa? How filial a child are you? And you being the good person that you are, you're going to pray, do whichever prayers that you do, you're going to say, no, I'm going to help you, bring you down here. You can only FaceTime your child and WhatsApp and technology for so much. You want to touch and feel, and bring the person on board. So these are some of the considerations that you definitely need to have in mind, because it might either make your process for applying for the correct visa a smooth going one, or it could accelerate the cost and time and the whole anxiety of saying, what was the whole idea of coming here after all, if it's going to be frustratingly expensive and painful and all that. So just bear in mind, like I said, let's just go to see whether any of this particular class is suitable for you in the first place. All right. Again, this is good. Why? Because the 884, you are eligible for a bridging visa. And again, Medicare, which we get the question all the time, I've applied for the visa, I'm onshore, do I get Medicare? This one is only granted, Medicare is only given to you when the visa is granted. The other one is good is that the assurance of support that I was talking about can be paid over a number of years, okay, eventually leading to the grant, because it's a bit of a hit. Because you've suddenly got to pay $20,000 or $40,000. For some people, it might be small change, but for some others, those are the money that can be used for some other means, for whatever various reasons that you want to think about. So hence why I put down that little one bullet point. I think it's self-explanatory. It's expensive. Okay. Again, onshore applicants, remember, check your conditions, which is what I've already mentioned in the previous one. So if you have that condition, it's okay, we can waive that, okay? Now, don't worry about the last part. Okay, bit of a mouthful, but let's read this. So a person who is a holder of an 884 and who is no longer the parent of the child because the child has died, God forbid, and who is not the parent of another child may apply an onshore. Okay, so this is again a very technical thing, but sometimes certain things happen, and don't feel that you've applied and then what happens if in the event that a child has died, what happens to your application? You are still eligible to get that, so don't have to feel that, as long as you're able to supply the assurance support in various ways. We'll come to that, okay? The contributory age parent lets older parents live in Australia for up to 2 years if they are parents of an Australian citizen, which we know, or who is settled, or who is a holder of a substituted 600 visa. If you are a holder of a subclass 600 and if you think this is applicable to you, without boring you with the technical side of things, then you can post that question and we can take that question from you, okay? Because I'm going to read off something that might be just over your head, but don't feel if it's not applicable to you, so then don't worry about it, okay? Bullet point number, last one. Okay, one must be in Australia when one applies for this visa and when the visa is granted. So we're talking about the 884 still, okay? Most applicants must be sponsored by their child and must meet the age requirement. Very important, okay? The applicant is eligible for a bridging visa, but not eligible for Medicare. I think we've already covered that. It's more of a rehash to what I've just mentioned, because some people might not be good at reading bullet points, they like to read paragraphs. So there you have it. Okay. This is how to lodge and where to lodge. I just put it down there because sometimes I realize that, not that, people normally say, oh, why is there 2 different places to actually, lodge this application? This is what the department needs. You don't have to worry about that because you're going to ask me to do it for you because I'm the one who's going to tell you where to lodge this application. Now, program caps. If there's anything to be talking about in terms of what is important, this is because over the years, and I've, like I said, been doing this for a while, and I've been here now in Australia for, goodness me, can I even say this live? 30 over years, which is amazing, So things have changed. A lot of people when they've settled, maybe 4-in-1, literally migrants, they want to bring in their family, they want to bring in family, and family is broken down in so many categories. You can bring in the siblings, you can bring in, spouses, you can bring in parents, and we'll go into it. There's another chart for that. All of these are subjected to caps, meaning the department over the years, let's just say hypothetically speaking, sometimes they have 215,000 per year. And then subsequently, then it'll come down to 200 and then 180 and so forth. So what I'm talking about is that every year that number changes. When that changes, they are planning and for certain classes of visas, determine which particular category gets capped, meaning you don't wear a cap, you don't get a feather in your cap, but they just say, oh, right, we're only going to say for this particular year, we have 7,500 for the entire year. Hence why, when you have that, hence why now, what is contributory, what is not contributory. So if you're contributory, your processing time is faster. So you're still subjected to capping, but it just makes it that much more easier when you pay the department that much more money, and they says thank you very much. So it makes it faster. What you must remember is, if you're subjected to capping, and that's why your application gets in the queue, and you've applied a 173, you've applied an 864, and you're thinking, hey, it says down there processing time is 48 months. Why is that accelerated? Because you are then in a queue with all the other people who've applied way before you, who've also met the same requirements, who've paid the same amount of money, but based on each year's capping, in which the number of visas are actually going to be granted, you are just going to be subjected to that waiting time. So there's no prioritizing any applications, okay? You can't just say, oh, I've paid more, and therefore, no, because everybody have done the same thing. So bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this says the cap only ever applies to the particular year, so they may change from year to year. So that's why it's very difficult. You've launched an application, and 2, 3, 4 years later, sometimes the same client will say, hey, what's happening? There's nothing that you can do. When the cap is reached, there is no visas granted for that particular year. So you just got to literally wait for the next year what the capping is. Do they increase that from 7,005 to 8,000 or whatever that might be for that particular class of visa? So I hope this is not too overwhelming. So program caps is basically that. Current processing times I've got down here. As you can tell, some people may have launched a visa way back in 2016, and only now they are probably surfacing, catching some breath of air and looking out and saying, oh, am I anywhere close? Have I been allocated a case officer, or is this moving along? So just be mindful of those categories if you're looking at that. Again, it's only self-explanatory if you've actually launched an application. So again, let's look at current processing times. Is continuing. Okay, this is important, right? So however, finalization of many parent visa applications will be put on temporary hold. This is literally from the department, right? So the situation will be reviewed periodically and until further extensions will be provided if necessary. So as soon as we have advised and the restrictions of our border have been returned to normal conditions, the department will update this from their website. And this is coming from the department. I don't make these rules. Onshore contributory parent visa subclasses have been assessed up to 2017. Goodness me, that's just unbelievable. So onshore lodged from 2017 onwards are likely to take longer to process, while we action offshore. Okay, so no one has any control over this, but just remember, if you're reading this, I just wanted you to be aware that it will determine which classes that you choose from now, because I don't think so we're going to have the borders closed for whatever period of time, and that's not my position or time to actually comment on. But if you at least factor that in and say, oh, maybe I want to have a faster, quicker reply, but you're only saving yourself 6 to 8 months down here, so it shouldn't really make a difference as to which visa you choose. Okay, just remember that. So current planning levels, like I was telling you about, Again, it might seem dry, but this is really, really important because these are the kind of things that migration agents live on. Because when we see this kind of stuff, we think, wow, so skill stream, okay, you know, it makes up that money, that much of composition. But look at the family visas. There's only 47,000 odd places, which is only 30%, right? Now, out of all of that, let's see how many percent goes to parent visas, which is really what we are interested in. And that shows us it's 15.4% to parent visas, which is 4.6% of total planning levels. If that doesn't excite you, I don't know what will, because that seriously just means goes to show that it's not a visa subclass that is really accelerated quickly for various reasons. They understand that, but it goes on to the planning levels. Subclass 870 has 15,000 places available only, right? So, Deepa, how am I doing on time? Am I good?
Yes, DM.
Okay,
We still have
cool.
time.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So you lose track, you know, when you're reading stuff like that, you just go, wow, parent visas and all that. We really don't know.
I know
Right.
it's a complex visa.
Okay, cool. So assurance of support is what I was talking about earlier on. It's a legal agreement, obviously, by you and the department. So it covers up to 2 adults. Remember, they are for the following visas: the parent 103, H804, and contributory 173 and 884. Okay. So when you're applying for that, we get this question all the time. Okay. So if you are applying for the applicants applying for parent or age parent, okay, the age assurance support is valid for 2 years. So remember that. Now, if it is a contributory age parent, then the assurance support is for 10 years. Basically, all you need to remember at the back of your head, save you the hassle of reading through all this information on the internet. And that's why I've just put it down on this bullet point, that the assurer must have an income greater than the threshold for the current financial year. Don't worry about that. We'll tell you what the kind of your threshold is, but just remember that there is a formula that they use. You have an income than the previous financial year at the same time, obviously, an Australian citizen or resident, 18 years or older, proof of identity, and be able to get a bank guarantee. How many percent can be covered? A bit much to read, but just remember you can cover up to 2 adults or 2 separate assurance support. Okay, just remember that. Primary applicant, okay, we've covered that. Okay, hang on. I'm just reading this on myself and thinking, what can we highlight down here? Once a person has been granted. Let's see. Right, once the visa applicant arrives, okay. Right, so as I was saying, when you have provided all of this request is usually asked when they are about to grant the visa. So hence why, you know, if you know that it's a 3 to 4 years of processing time, it kind of gives you the opportunity to save up, if you want to call it, or have that money. And when they ask you, it is as good as they are about to grant the visa, and then you need to make sure that you've actually provided this then. Okay. Oh, parent visa of the temporary kind. Introduction very quickly is 870. This is a fairly new visa that was introduced, much to the delight of a lot of people who actually said, hey, we've got parents who don't want to go into the PR pathways and all that. We just want them to come down. And this is basically what we're going to be covering in the next few slides. And I'll try to be as brief as possible. But this is important. Purely why? Because a lot of people have taken this thing up, but there is a cap. I believe it was about 15,000 per year only. So let's just understand this very quickly. Sponsored parent will be introduced, okay, which has already been introduced. Sorry, the temporary parent visa is designed to allow parents to spend longer periods of time with their children without placing additional burden on the healthcare system. Okay, so visa applicants are accepted. Parent is temporary. So this is temporary. Just remember 870, which is another number to deal with, is temporary. Okay. Now, what does it mean? It's just to allow you to reunite with children, grandkids, and whatnot. At the same time, it lets you stay for up to 5 years, maximum 10. Again, for some parents and some family and their kids, this is exactly what they want. Okay. So it doesn't affect all the other parent visa categories that we're talking about. Just remember that, okay? And the good part of that is the balance of family test does not apply to this new visa. And hence why it's a very attractive thing for some people who, for various reasons that I was trying to say to you earlier on, if you don't have the balance of family test requirements, which some of the other visas are, then and you still want to spend some time with your family and loved ones, this really is a very popular visa, right? You're going to have let's see, a person must still satisfy the number of requirements, including the child being approved as a sponsor, identity, health, character requirements, obviously notwithstanding, not having any public health debt, because reason being is because you need to meet the salary threshold to actually, sponsor this parent. They must hold, obviously, health insurance, student provided valid for their intended stay. The visa can be for 5 years, and if it's a 5-year stay, that's the cost for that visa, which is $10,000 to the department, obviously. And if it's a 3-year visa, then the cost is for $5,000. Now, as I was saying, it's up to 15,000 of these visas may be granted each program year, so which is pretty good. Now, the limit also reflects priority for visas for partners. Okay, so whilst you're on this visa, and I get this question asked all the time. Well, sometimes you have a parent or age parent, they've come down, they've spent $5,000 or $10,000 and whatnot to keep the child down, to keep the parent here for 3 to 5 years. Can they work? Well, no, actually, you cannot add any family members and you cannot work. Now, if that is of kind of importance to you, that if you want a parent to come down here and then still work, I don't know. I'm not suggesting anything different down here. I'm not supposed to anyway. But some people come up with very interesting ways. This is be nice to your parent. If they are coming down, looking after your kids and whatnot, you're already saving that much of money. You would have paid otherwise a lot of money outside. If there's an agreement between you and your parent, maybe it's about time you start paying them to look after your kids. Maybe that's the only form of payment that they can probably actually get. So be nice to your parents if they come down, and you can pay them in that manner if you like. So sponsorship requirements, the sponsor must be biological, adoptive, or stepchild of their parent, provide valid evidence of their identity. You just cannot just, willy-nilly just say that, you are wanting to be the sponsor. You must have at least lived in Australia for 4 years. As I was saying earlier on, there is a minimum household income requirement. You must be approved before the 870 can be lodged. So what that really means is that in order to apply for this, unlike the other visas, here you got to apply, and the approval will be given to you based on the information that you've already provided, and then the department will deem if that's okay, you met all the requirements, then they will invite you to come and apply for that visa. So the sponsorship fee, as I said, is $420. Sponsorship requirements, sponsor, this is what I was trying to say earlier on. So your taxable income has to be at least of that at the moment, 83,000 or thereabouts. If a sponsor's taxable income is combined with other taxable incomes, let's see, their combined income is at least equal to amount specified, then the tax income is met. So really, if you have that amount, then it just gives them, or the department, a little bit of comfort knowing that you are able to at least meet these particular requirements to sponsor your eligible parent. So what are the obligations? Let's see. These are just some basic obligations. We don't have to go into this. So just some sponsorship requirements. Obviously, you've never been charged. The event person sponsored by the person, we don't have to worry about that. Make changes to sponsorship. Sponsorship can only cover up to 2 parents per household at a time. Let's see. You don't have to worry. Adding a parent. Right. So this thing happens sometimes when you've applied for one and then you want to add or vary or along the way. you can do that. Then you can basically add a parent to their sponsorship. Is what I'm trying to say. So you can start off by one if you want to call it, and if the other, so don't feel that you got to do both at the same time. Is what I'm trying to say, because sometimes you don't have to make both applications at the same time. Okay. Now, removing a parent if your child is already a sponsor for 2. Again, very dry. I do apologize if you've been listening to these, but at this stage, just remember, this is the 870. Your client needs to reapply. Don't worry, this doesn't apply to you. Okay. They will need to withdraw. Okay, so not applicable to you. Don't worry about this, because wait, I think I'm done.
Right.
I think I've just hit the accidental last button at the same time, and I was going to sort of jump into the whole thing, but I'm pretty much done, Deepa.
Right. Thank you, DM. That was very informative, and it went in detail. And at the same time, you shared as much case study scenarios as possible without violating any client's privacy.
Yeah.
It was great. We do have a couple of questions we can take,
Okay.
because we are running late as well.
Okay.
This was originally for half an hour. So there is a question from Annie, a guest. We submitted parent visa 143 and recently received Q date letter, which is April 2020. Does that mean they will assess our visa anytime soon? They're talking about a parent visa 143 application where they've received a Q letter.
Mm-hmm.
In April 2020. So the guest wants to know what's the significance of that. Does it mean whether their visa will be assessed anytime soon?
It doesn't mean anything. It just means that, for me, from my understanding for what you just replied, to say that if it's a 143, this is for any high. Thanks for the question, by the way. So it's almost trying to say to you the very things that we spoke about earlier on. Because it's a contributory parent, it's a 143, you are already in the queue for something, and they're not, I don't know when was it lodged. Remember, we don't know that information. Yeah. We only know now that she has been contacted by the department and they've given you, it's almost like saying, hey, I've got you in my vision, and I would need you to be aware that you need to provide XYZ. If that's happening,
right,
then it's as good as an indication, because she mentioned 2020.
Right.
You know, when was it launched? How long has it been? Usually, like I said to you, the processing time for a 143, don't follow what's on the department website, because that changes. It's no longer 2 to 3 years. It can be 4 to 5 years before that happens. Feel free, Annie, since you have that contact, feel free to contact the department. Really, just say, hey, hi, I've been getting this. Ask them that question, and this is what we do for our clients, Deepa.
Yes.
We are not shy to ask the department any questions. Tell them, does this mean that you're going to be granting my visa anytime soon? Don't pop the champagne bottles just yet. Ask them a few more questions before you jump to any sort of conclusions.
Right. And what about applicants? For a majority of visas, you can go by the standard processing time.
Correct.
When it comes to parent visas, the processing times, there's no. Sorry, there is Annie here.
Okay.
Well, I'll come to my question. Annie, would you like to tell when did you apply for the visa?
Yeah.
Because he can give you specific advice. Yeah, June 2018.
So perfectly, exactly as what we would have anticipated, right? 2018 she applied, so now they have told her that you're already in the queue right now. So it's taken them 2 years to look into that. So she's in fact quite lucky in the sense that I think what would have ordinarily taken 3 to 4 years, they are already telling her that she is quite close to be actually getting this grant.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just wait up from now. You won't know until it's actually granted. You know what I'm trying to say? But Deepa, sorry, without going into specifics,
correct.
If the only question is, oh, they've sent me this, what does it mean? 2018 to 2020 is about good enough time for a 143 to be moving along at the right processing time.
Right.
Okay? 2020 to now, which is more than a year, ask them, hey, were you just teasing me or were you going to grant this visa? Ask them that.
Right. What is the mode that they have to use to ask that, DM?
They have a correspondent, they have a TRN, they have
Yeah.
an email address.
Yes.
They literally write to them. Literally write to them.
Right.
And there's an email that we can share later on if she wants to get in touch. I'll tell her which one to write, and there's a template that I use, and we say, and you will get an answer within 7 days.
Wonderful. So that is, they would have to take that into account that an applicant is requesting for a follow-up and respond.
Correct.
Even though it is nowhere near their standard processing time for the visa, they still have to respond, right?
They still have to respond, yeah. So because if this parent's in doubt or something has happened untoward and whatnot, then obviously if it goes beyond the standard processing time, then we'll write to the global feedback unit. This says, oh, hi, why, this and that, the other. Don't rock the boat in that manner. You have been contacted, you have an email address. You are obliged to just either ask them back and you will get a reply. You're not in the dark. If they've contacted you because they know how to contact you, so you form the same means of contact back to them. Right.
Annie, I hope you found that answer very useful. Thank you so much for the session, DM. I've shared a feedback link where you can give us feedback on what we did well, where we have to improve, how did you find the session. I've also shared in the comment box DM's email address. So if you want to write to him, you can find his email address in the comment section and you can get in touch with him.
Can I just add, sorry, Deepa, just very quickly, can I also add, parent visas, like probably other visas, when you're doing this kind of stuff, it's really very hard because as an agent, we see some stuff, we are riveted. We understand the ins and outs, the policies, the schedules, and the requirements, the onshore and offshore. So sometimes it might be difficult to maybe get to a specific person. We don't even know where they're from, what their situation is. Any situation, we have to ask the question twice to finally establish what exactly it is. Can you imagine if that happens? If you have a query, they are more than welcome to put their scenario, where, what, why they want to do it. That's where we jump into the picture. That's why we are going to be doing something fundamentally different to actually answer their question in that context.
Correct. So while this is, I think what the audience have to take in mind is this is a general advice.
Correct. Yeah.
And disclaimers, guys, because many facets may come about as we know more about your case. So we encourage everyone, if you have more questions, to get in touch with DM.
Yeah.
I've dropped his email in the comment box. I am also sharing the list of upcoming sessions. As part of our conclave, we have a great session coming up on global talent visa. We have sessions coming up on professional law. We have sessions coming up on employer-sponsored visa, and we have very eminent panel, a lot of experienced migration agents addressing these topics. I would also like to drop a reminder to all the audience that if you want your questions answered in a personalized way where you need a one-on-one consultation, please make sure to join our Q&A session. It is happening 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and we have 3 migration agents waiting to answer all of your questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Please don't forget to leave a review. Thank you, DM. You've been so gracious.
Thank you. That's I hope it was informative. Thank you, Deepa, and thank you for all those people tuning in from wherever you are from the world.
Thank you. Best of luck, guys. Thank you.